Hello and welcome to this Genshin guide series where I provide suggestions on how to build a particular character. This will include their best weapons, artifact sets, and team comps. It doesn't matter what adventure rank you are, this guide is meant for everyone that loves Genshin and want to learn how to build their favorite character. Childe's banner finally got released and I hope everyone is excited as me to pull for Childe. I think Childe is a very fun character to play with an interesting kit, and besides he looks very cool. In this video I want to explain what weapons, artifact sets and team comps are good for Childe. I will mainly focus on main DPS build for Childe, but it's also possible to use him as a burst support. Before I go any further, I want to quickly address his talents and his constellations. For his normal attacks, Childe performs arrow shots up to 6 times. When his charge shots hits an opponent, it will apply a Riptide mark on the enemy for 10 seconds, which can be increased to 8 seconds after unlocking his passive talent. His elemental skill allows Childe to enter melee stance. In this stance, Childe is able to hit enemies with daggers that deal hydro damage and cannot be overwritten by other elements. The longer Childe stays in this melee stance, the longer the cooldown on the ability. I recommend not to use his elemental skill for longer than 15 seconds. Childe can perform 2 types of elemental burst, and it depends on the stance of Childe at the moment of activation. In the ranged stance, he fires an arrow that deals AoE hydro damage and applies the Riptide mark on enemies. The melee stance he performs a slash, dealing large AoE hydro damage in front of him. Childe's passive talents are all centered around applying the Riptide mark. His first passive talent extends the Riptide duration by 8 seconds. Second passive talent allows Childe to apply the Riptide mark on enemies after a critical hit in his melee stance. His third passive talent increases the normal attack level by 1 of all party members. Opponents that have the Riptide mark applied to them will suffer from extra AoE hydro damage in various ways. There are 4 ways to apply Riptide on the enemies: using charge shots, elemental burst in range stance, critical hits in melee stance, or killing opponents with the Riptide mark, which will spread Riptide to other nearby opponents. Hitting enemy with the Riptide will proc extra AoE hydro damage, and there are a few examples. Riptide Slash triggers when Childe is hitting opponents in his melee stance. Riptide Flash triggers when Childe uses charge shots on enemies affected by Riptide. Both Riptide Slash and Flash deal AoE hydro damage. Riptide Blast triggers when Childe hits opponents with his elemental burst, which deals explosion AoE hydro damage. Overall, I think his constellations are very good. His first constellation decreases his cooldown on his elemental skill, and this is a very helpful constellation because he has a high cooldown on his elemental skill. His second constellation regenerates elemental energy when Childe defeats opponents affected by the Riptide mark. His third constellation increases the level of his elemental skill by 3. His fourth constellation is one of his best constellations in my opinion. This constellation basically will trigger the Riptide Slashes and Riptide Flashes to opponents which have the Riptide mark on them, even when Childe is not on the field. His fifth constellation increases the elemental burst level by 3, and his sixth constellation allows Childe to reset the cooldown of his elemental skill after he has used his elemental burst. In my opinion, his fourth and first constellation are his best constellations. As artifact sets go, for a main DPS Childe, the best in slot artifact set is a 4-piece Heart of Depth set. It increases his hydro damage and his normal attacks when he is in melee stance. The second best artifact set will be the 2-piece Heart of Depth and 2-piece Gladiator set. If you want to increase his elemental burst, then you can also consider swapping out the Gladiator with the 2-piece Noblesse. If you are running Childe with another character that can provide shields for him, then the Polite set can also be an option. If you are running Childe in a perma-freeze comp, then I can see that a 4-piece Blizzard Strayer can also be good. If you are running Childe as a burst support, then the best artifact set would be the 2-piece Noblesse and the 2-piece Heart of Depth. You can swap out the 2-piece Noblesse for Wanderer Troop, or you can combine a 2-piece Wanderer Troop with a 2-piece Noblesse. For 4-star artifacts, you can consider the Instructor, the Exile and the Scholar artifact sets to increase his energy recharge or elemental mastery of the team. The best weapons for Childe are by far the Skyward Harp, Viridescent Hunt and the Amos Bow. A high refinement rust can also be considered an S-tier weapon for Childe. The reason why the Stringless and the Sacrificial Bow are ranked low is because their passive do not work on the elemental skill of Childe. First team comp is an Electrocharge team where Childe acts as a main DPS. This team features Childe, Fischl, Beidou and Bennett. Through triggering the elemental reaction Electrocharge, you are able to stagger enemies and deal a lot of damage. The Electro Resonance allows you to increase the energy particle gain for both Beidou and Fischl. The main team consists of Childe, Beidou and Fischl. You are able to swap Bennett for another healer or Jinshu. This is an S-tier comp. While the elemental skill of Childe is on cooldown, you should prioritize on farming your burst with Beidou and Fischl. The second team is a Vaporize team comp which features Childe as a main DPS. This team features Childe, Janlin, Kaya and Bennett. Through triggering the elemental reaction Vaporize, your Janlin is able to do a lot of damage. The main team consists of Childe and Janlin. You can swap out Kaya for another cryo support like Rosaria, or Bennett with another healer like Noelle and Iona. I rate this team an A because this team is not able to deal with Geoshields. While the elemental skill of Childe is on cooldown, you can play with Janlin and Kaya and do melt reactions. The third team is an Overload Electrocharge team where Childe functions as a main DPS. This team features Childe, Beidou, Janlin and Bennett. Through triggering the elemental reaction Electrocharge and Overload, you are able to deal a lot of AoE damage. The Pyro Resonance increases your attack by 25% for all party members. The main team consists of Childe, Beidou and Janlin. You can swap out Bennett for any other healer or support. While the elemental skill of Childe is on cooldown, you can do overload reactions with Beidou and Janlin. This is an S tier team. The fourth team is a Geo comp where Childe is the main DPS. This team features Childe, Fischl, Albedo and Jean. Through triggering the elemental reaction Electrocharge, you are able to stagger enemies and deal a lot of damage. Albedo and Jean are there to provide some extra damage and crowd control. The main team consists of Childe and Fischl. You're able to swap Albedo for Zhongli and Jean to any other healer. This is an S tier team comp. When Childe's elemental skill was on cooldown, try to prioritize farming your burst with Albedo and Fischl. The fifth team is a Permafreeze team comp which features Childe as the main DPS. This team features Childe, Kaya, Ganyu and Bennett. Through triggering the elemental reaction freeze, you are able to freeze enemies and deal increased damage. The Cryo Resonance increases your crit rate against enemies which are affected by cryo or are frozen. The main team consists of Childe and Kaya. You are able to swap out Ganyu for another cryo support like Rosaria or Zinshu, and you can swap Bennett for another healer. This team is an S tier team. While Childe's elemental skill was on cooldown, you can do charge shots with Ganyu. The fifth team is a free-to-play alternative where Childe functions as the main DPS. This team features Childe, Janlin, Kaya and Barbara. Through triggering the elemental reaction Vaporize, you are able to do a lot of damage with your Janlin. And while the elemental skill of Childe is on cooldown, you can proc melt reactions with Janlin and Kaya. The Hydro Resonance increases the energy particle gain for both Childe and Barbara. The team comps with Childe are obviously not bound to the ones shown in this video, so my advice is to use the shown team comps as a tool to create your own team comps. So far I've been quite happy to have pulled for Childe, and let me know down in the comments what you think of Childe. Thanks for watching, and if you liked the video don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. Peace!